Hello there, friends. I'm Scott Wakefield, lead pastor at First Christian Church of Greene County, and I'm here today with
Christy Hoeke.
And we are going to have a
Coffee
convo. Yes. All right. Friendly reminder, Coffee Convos is an opportunity to hear about the work of God in the lives of our friends. And so we're going to have a good convo with some good friends here today. A good friend, Christy Hoeke. So let us know you're here, jump in and ask some questions. We've got a number that have already been asked. So let's jump in. Christy, tell us where you're from, background, family of origin, where you grew up, and whatever comes to mind that is helpful for us to know to tell us who you are.
I was born here in Greenville, lowly beginnings on the second floor of the Dixon Williams Mansion.
Really?
No lie. No
Wow.
lie. It was the Greenville Hospital.
Yeah.
In the year of my birth, which I will not name.
No need to disclose.
But yeah, that's where my mom gave birth.
So that was
floor.
the hospital. Mm-hmm. Before the hospital, I've also heard people talk about that is now
on the
where
Walter State
is. Yes.
Property. Yes.
So we're talking at least, 3 hospitals back.
Yes. At least.
Dixon Williams Mansion, huh?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
That's really cool.
My mom and dad moved here from North Carolina.
Okay.
He was a professor at Tusculum College when it was college.
Yeah.
And
so that's how y'all came.
that's how we arrived here.
Yeah.
He
What
went
did he
on.
teach?
He was a political science professor
Ah, cool.
in the heyday of the 70s, Old Oak Festival's hippie free love movement.
Nice.
And he moved on to pursue some political aspirations in Nashville.
Huh.
And it never really panned out. Mom didn't go with him, so we stayed here.
Okay.
And she married another wonderful man, my stepfather, James Gregg, and he raised us, my sister and myself,
Right.
here in Greene County.
Gotcha. Yes. I'm remembering some history now that we've talked
Yes.
about. Cool. All right. So you're a native Greenvillian.
I am.
There are fewer and fewer native Greenvillians.
Yes, there are.
And we've only been here about 20 years, but I've been amazed, even in just these 20 years, how it feels like in the last 5 to 10 or so, Greene Countians and Greenvillians who are natives feel fewer and far between.
And sometimes you're still not really considered a native just because you were born here. You have to, date back a few generations. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Indeed. Cool. So when you were a kid, growing up here in good old Greenville, Greene County, what was life like in ways that were wonderful and fun and enjoyable for you looking back?
Oh, it was pretty simple. I had a bike. I rode my bike up and down our cul-de-sac. We had a little forested area beside my house that
Nice.
I remember playing in,
Yeah.
stripping the honeysuckle and doing things like that as a kid.
That's cool.
A
Yeah.
doghouse that we were scared to go in because of the spider webs and all the other stuff because the dog wouldn't live there.
If the dog
So it
doesn't,
was
you should
supposed
not
to be
go in.
our playhouse,
Huh.
but we didn't want to play in there because it was full of spiders and
This
bugs.
was your dog house, like your family's dog
Yeah.
house?
Yes.
And you were scared of it, huh?
Yes.
I, in a couple places we lived, rode my bike everywhere. And there were a couple places where we had some forest and some place to roam. And I would come upon something, the doghouse made me think of this. There's this one place near where friends and I would play that I refused to go in. They would go in, I would not do it. I was always freaked out because, whatever, spiders, ghosts,
Right.
dogs.
Right.
People.
Now, I didn't ride my bike everywhere, up
No.
and down our road.
Oh, yeah.
Because our road connected to Mount Bethel Road. And even as a child, I knew you had to be a maniac
It's a
to
big
ride a
road.
bike on that road. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Good stuff. So, how do you think things are different for you as a mom with your kids in this modern day than you think your parents were with you as a kid? Looking back how Greenville, Greene County used to be, and this isn't just Greenville, Greene County, this is just kind of life now. Because I think about my own kids, I don't let them go, past our driveway.
Right.
But I used to go all over creation, and Mom would yell or call somebody who would call somebody, and they would yell, a few streets down, etc. What are some ways, because you're a teacher, you've got kids, What are some ways, looking back in your own life, and then what you see now, things are different?
Well, when Ben and Claire were small, when they were young,
Yeah.
it was probably pretty similar because we live in a very, I don't want to say isolated, it's a neighborhood, but we have a lot of property around us, and there were a few kids to play with, but they weren't running all over the place. It's
Right,
not
right.
like you're in the middle of town where you could drive to the park or ride to the park or do any of that kind of stuff.
That's true. Where you are is sort of its own.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's its
little
own
world.
little microcosm, I would
Yeah.
say. But as they got older, I still think through middle school things were pretty similar. I remember the same kinds of issues they had in middle school that I had in middle school, and we were both at Greenville Middle School. So those kinds of things were very similar.
Yeah.
As they got into high school, then phones and social media have become more of a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say my kids don't have problems with it, but I don't see the problems. I don't see them having problems with it the way I see it affecting some of our students.
Yeah, for sure. We will
Absolutely.
definitely come back to that
Yes.
when we get back to kids and teaching, etc. So you mentioned your kids and family. Tell us about Stuart and Ben and Claire and all that stuff.
Well, Stuart and I got married about almost 23 years ago.
Cool.
And built our own house, and had to go through fertility treatments with our children. We were not successful any other way.
Okay.
And so we were blessed that they both worked the first time.
Huh.
And that's Ben and Claire.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ben is recently...
Engaged. Yes.
I was going to let you finish that.
Yes.
Recently engaged. What's her name?
Gracie Ackrey.
Grace. Yes, cool. And they met at school?
Yeah. Well, yes. They
Ish.
met through school.
Through
school. He works with the Murray State Campus Ministries.
Oh, okay.
And she had brothers, cousins, friends that she'd grown up in church with that
Okay.
were also involved in that.
So there were people scheming or something
Yeah.
like that. Huh?
I don't know that there was really any scheming. It was just he knew of her, and the more he got to know of her, the
Cool.
more he thought he wanted to be around her even more. And
There you go.
it apparently worked out.
Good stuff. Claire is at...
Claire's at UT Chattanooga.
Yes.
UTC, and it's first semester of college, so she's had a couple of bumps. But
Yeah, it is a tough transition.
living with people that you've never lived with before, I completely forgot how hard that can be.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, and it's a whole different animal, a whole different world. The people that you know with whom you have good relationship over many years, because she's lived her whole life.
right. They both did.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah, we've been experiencing some of that as well with ours. So, what's the best thing about being a mom?
Everything. I mean, it's a great job if you can get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. What about, you mentioned going through fertility treatments.
Yes.
How has that affected your perspective of being a mother? And that you couldn't, and it was hard, and lots of folks, actually, it's kind of a not loudly talked about thing, but that's common.
It is.
A lot of folks struggle with those kinds of things, whether it's being unable to, fertility treatments, losing children along the way, etc.
Right.
How has that affected your perspective of being a mom?
I actually don't think it has.
Okay.
Seriously. It was probably hard on my kids as a teacher because I saw forever. I was, 5, 6, 8 years a teacher before I had kids, and I taught middle school kids, so I saw plenty of behaviors that I didn't want to see in my own home.
Right.
And from the time they were young, I set high expectations for their behavior
Yeah.
and the way they act. I'm not saying I expected them to be potty trained when they were 4 months old or anything like that, but
No, but you can see it in the heck of kids. I mean,
I had expectations for them, and Stuart gave me a hard time about that once. He said, "Why are you treating our 6-year-old like they're in high school?" And I said, "Well, when are they going to learn how to behave?
Agreed.
Because if you don't start young."
I have long thought, I mean, of course you want to be developmental about
Right.
certain things. But I know that for me, growing up as a Wakefield, I grew up around a lot of adults who talked as adults with
Right.
me, and not just like I'm a kid who didn't understand anything. And I think that was a part of a substantively important part of me growing up in ways that I look back and I'm grateful for. Yeah. So, here are some questions that we have given to us that folks have submitted. Actually, we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
So let's do some lightning round. Favorite food or type
Probably
of food?
pizza. I mean, I'll
Preach.
eat almost anything.
Really?
Yes, really.
Pizza. Yes.
We regularly eat food from all different ethnicities. We had pho the other night, and it's spelled P-H-O.
Yes, it is.
But Stuart, I call him my chef. Yes.
Is it Thai?
It's Thai.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I call him my chef, but he'll make anything, and it's usually better than what we get at restaurants.
Cool.
And of course, it's customizable because it is.
Good stuff.
But yeah, pizza is probably the one thing. If I couldn't eat anything else for the rest of my life,
That's what it would be?
I'd weigh 100 pounds more than I do now, but
Yes.
But yeah, it would be pizza.
I'm with you. There's almost no such thing as bad pizza. So that answers this question. Somebody asked, would you rather eat out someplace special or cook for yourself from your garden?
No, I would rather. Well, I'll cook for myself from my garden if I have to.
Uh-huh.
But if Stu's home, yes, from the garden. And we have all kinds of stuff.
Really?
I probably have 15 different herbs
Really?
growing in and around my house.
Wow.
Everything from the normal, I'd say normal, parsley and cilantro and basil to hyssop and lemongrass
Really?
and parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.
Nice.
Seriously.
Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. So Stu is quite the exotic chef.
He can make almost anything that you ask him to.
I think I've heard y'all talk about that some before. So is he the gardener? Are you the gardener? Yes?
Oh, no.
What?
I'm the gardener.
You're the gardener.
If I asked him to till an area, he would do it. But he pulled out some of my cilantro that was starting to go to seed because he thought it looked like Queen Anne's lace. And so I find this cilantro plant lying in the yard. And I'm like, why did you pull that? He said, it was a weed. And I'm like, no, that's not a weed.
That's not a weed. You can eat that.
Leave it alone because it's got coriander once it starts to go to seed.
I would have no idea of anything that you basically just said. I know that those are words that are meaningful, but that's about it. Any hobbies? Christy, do you have hobbies?
Besides the gardening.
Yeah. That's good.
I started taking a class, and it's not so much a class as it is an open workshop once you know how to do and what to do on stained glass.
Oh, really?
Out in limestone, and I love working with stained glass. It tears up my hands sometimes, but so does gardening. So
Because it's glass, or because of the
way that,
materials and
the
chemicals?
way that they have taught us, well, not the chemicals.
Okay.
The way they've taught us to cut, or you score glass, you don't cut it,
Uh-huh.
and then you break it.
Right.
And you can break it with your hands, but if you're repetitively breaking, like I was the other day, you end up with tiny
Little
little
shards or
almost
something.
paper cuts.
Oh, yeah.
No, just from the glass.
Okay.
And then you use soldering iron to put stuff together, and if you don't do what they told you to do, then you end up burning yourself.
Nice.
So
is that at Washington Academy?
They do it at Washington College Academy, but Artistry and Glass is the name of the workshop, and it's right after you get into Limestone, beside the railroad tracks.
Cool. Stained glass.
Yeah, it's weirdly relaxing,
I
even though
bet.
it's stressful because glass doesn't always break the way you score it. And so if you're working with an expensive piece of glass and you need this specific shape and you can't get it right, it can be very frustrating.
Yeah.
And so you think, well, why would anybody do that? But it's so neat to see what you can create.
Yeah. So you've made stuff. You're to the point where you've got things you've made sitting around the house.
And I just started it
Cool.
in December. Yeah,
So
I made
what's-
Ben
go
and
ahead.
Claire birthday presents.
Nice.
I made another piece that I kept for myself, even though it was originally supposed to go to someone. I liked it so much. I was like, I can't give this away.
How long do most of the pieces that you make take?
Kind of depends on how many cuts you have to make for the glass.
Okay.
But I can usually I can do something medium-sized. I haven't done any large works yet. I can do something medium-sized in 6 hours. I can do something smallish in maybe 2 to 4.
So you're coloring the glass?
No. Typically, you buy colored glass or clear glass. You can always paint it.
Sure. Okay.
And that's more advanced than I am right now. And the man that I work with, Bill Donahoe, is the son of Richard Donahoe, is the owner of the glass shop. Okay. And Bill can sandblast things into the glass. Okay. I made Ben a racer for Murray State racehorses. Okay. And he sandblasted the racer into the top of an M that I created.
Cool. Good stuff. Yeah, we would not have known that had you not shared that on Coffee Convos.
No.
There you go. Anything else about you people don't likely know?
Oh, I'm a crier. Huge crier. I can't watch the commercials about the dogs and cats needing that home for the ASPCA or whatever it is. They used to have, they don't have them that often anymore, but they used to have really, like Hallmark commercials, the Hallmark card commercials.
Yes.
Just forget about it.
So you are an emoter? You're outwardly emotional, expressive feeler?
I think I'm just a little too empathetic. I feel what other people are feeling. Okay. And then it makes, I can't watch people cry. Yeah. Can't talk to a crying person. And at school, I haven't yet. And, mostly as long as I don't have to read a story about a dog.
No Old Yeller stories.
No.
I cried at Old Yeller big time.
Yeah.
I did not expect it.
Yeah.
I did not expect where it was headed. Not to give it away to those who don't. Anyway, one more about Christy personally. Okay. Question here. What are some words or phrases those who know you well would use to describe you?
Well, I prefer driven over stubborn, but I think, yes, people would probably, once I have made up my mind about something, passionate about the things that I enjoy doing. Okay. You prefer driven over stubborn. Well, wouldn't you? Yes, I would. I'd prefer it. I can be cuddly, but, pandemic's kind of driven that away. But I don't know. That's probably a question better asked to people that know me than me. Sure. I can't read thoughts. Sure. So you are a teacher. Yes. You've been a teacher a good while. Oh, yes. Why did you become a teacher? I wanted to make a difference. It's a pat answer. Oh, but that's a good one. That was it. Yeah. Now, I told my mom when I was about 4th grade, I said, I'm never going to be a teacher. Oh, really? And she said, never say never. And here we are. Yep. How many years later, how long have you been a teacher? 25 years. 25 years. So why do you think you said that in 4th grade? And what changed? I think probably in 4th grade I saw how my fellow classmates treated her. She taught 3rd grade, and we had some kind of rough boys in 3rd grade. Okay. And I was like, you're mean to my mom. I would never want to put myself in that position. Right. But, by the time you get grown up, that's not necessarily the consideration. Well, you're not feeling threatened by 3rd grade boys. Right. But you can feel threatened by high school kids, so that's a little bit different. And their and their families and parents. So what were there any people, you mentioned your mom, obviously, were there any other people or your own mom who were models for you, who were particularly helpful teachers, favorite teachers, people who are part of that change from I'm never doing this because I see how they treat you to how you changed? I can't recall a teacher that I really disliked. I always liked my teachers for the most part. But I don't think any of my teachers flipped that switch for me. Yeah. I don't think I saw a teacher and I went, oh, that's what I have to do when I grow up. Right. It's interesting. I say similar things oftentimes when people ask me, because
I asked that kind of question because oftentimes people are like, oh, there's this one moment where, or Mr. Da-da-da, or Mrs. Da-da-da, because there's a story or there's a moment. I don't think about it that way. And for me, it's a long line of examples of things like that that become this sort of blur of a story of that thing that you just said. Are you an abstract thinker?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That was quick.
Yeah.
But you've done some theater and some acting, and
Writing,
that's part of what you taught. And so you'd say that you didn't dislike any of your teachers, and there was something you were learning from them all along the way.
Right.
So was that experience of learning along the way, of them teaching you that what was the thing?
I don't know. I think maybe it's a little bit genetic.
Okay.
Because my grandmother taught for a little while, and both my mom and dad.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a college professor, but he's still a teacher.
Sure.
I think maybe there's a little component of that. You know,
it's what you grew up in.
It's where I was comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times when kids don't like school or don't do well in school, they don't like school.
Yeah.
And when you're comfortable in something, then you gravitate towards it.
And you liked school.
I always liked school.
Yeah.
I would have been a professional college student if it weren't so expensive. I even went and got my doctorate in education. I'd go back and get another one in something else. Now, I don't know if I'd want to do a thesis again. That dissertation process was rough.
Yeah.
But other than that, if it didn't cost anything.
Yeah. Cool. So what were your favorite subjects, and what did you end up teaching?
I was always pretty good in English, and I enjoyed English. History as well. I didn't have problems in math or science. It wasn't that consideration. I just wasn't motivated to do that kind of thing. I taught middle school English and history. I taught high school English and theater. Theater was a passion of mine. It's what I got my undergraduate degree in.
Oh, okay.
Because I graduated for the first time from college at a time when my mom said, and I always respected her opinion, I always have, do something you enjoy. Yeah. Because you'll get a job because you have a degree.
Right.
And that changed by the time I graduated college. In between the time I started college and the time I graduated college, it became more important. I told both of my kids, and I would tell any student that ever asked, go somewhere to a school where you're going to have an internship so you get your foot in the door for some kind of permanent position, because it's so much easier than going on all the dry calls after you graduate looking for a job.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how many. We just did a college visit earlier this week with our second of three, and I was thinking about this very thing. School after school after school now, the vast majority of kids, they're trying to hook up with internships or with a company or something like that by the time they are even a junior, senior. And that's starting much earlier than it used to. And those vocational pieces that are the practical application of the class time is much more of a focus, at least in higher education, that I can see.
That's probably the biggest difference I've experienced in my career now between teaching and being an administrator. Okay. Because all of that training in my doctorate did not exactly give me that experience of student teaching in a classroom. There was no student principaling. And assistant principal doesn't necessarily mean learning principal. You have to hit the ground running as an assistant principal anyway.
Meaning what?
Day one, I had discipline. I had bus duty as the person in charge. I was doing everything I needed to do as a full principal with background, obviously, having the doctorate, but not necessarily practical training.
Sure. So you're assistant principal at Chuckey-Doak High School.
Yes.
And that's different than teaching in a bunch of ways.
Oh, yes.
How's that transition been? What's been a surprise? What's been easier, etc.?
Do you know anything about swimming?
Very vaguely. I can stay afloat.
Yes.
I'm not good.
I can swim,
Okay.
and I enjoy watching the Olympics. I don't competitively swim or anything,
Right.
but there are a lot of different strokes,
Uh-huh.
and there's a medley
Yes.
where you perform all of
All
those
of them,
strokes.
yeah.
You do the backstroke, and then freestyle, and then butterfly.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so being an assistant principal, and I'm sure principal, associate principal, anything else like that's going to be the same.
Yes.
It's like being in one of those medley races, except they call a stroke 2 strokes in,
Right.
and then you have to change.
Right. It's
And then
not
you
like
have
you
to
know
change.
that the
It's not-
stroke is
not
happening at the end of the. Right. Right.
You have to come back.
And the pattern doesn't necessarily.
No,
yeah, right.
no, there is no pattern. There is no pattern. I will be in the middle of scoring an evaluation that I've done on a teacher, and
Yeah.
I'll get a phone call from a parent that I
Yeah.
have to deal with,
Right.
or a bus issue. I've been in the middle of an IEP meeting and then
Yes.
been called away to deal with something else. So
Yes.
it's you have to be on your game
Yeah.
all the time,
Yeah.
and it's interesting.
Does it feel like everything that comes up to the person who's, well, you're dealing with it, of course, but not you. Does the person coming to you or the need coming to you always feel to them like it's an emergency?
To them, always.
Yeah.
There are times when people say, when you have a minute, can I
Right.
talk to you about this?
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay, I hear what you have to tell me. I'm going to have to get to it this afternoon instead of right now.
Right.
And I think communicating with people in that way
Yes.
is really very important for an
Yeah.
administrator.
Yeah.
So they know that you heard what they needed,
Right.
and that you will deal with it as much as you can as soon as you can.
Yeah. Because it's probably also, and I understand some of that, it's a bit like the difference of I'm in charge of youth ministry as opposed to all the ministries, and then all the people that are part of those ministries who may have questions, issues, things to talk about, et cetera, that have nothing to do with those ministries. And so it is a bit like the stroke changes from moment to moment, person to person. And when, and this I think is true of most people with jobs and responsibilities in our world nowadays, with the busyness of modern life. But when your to-do lists become not just these things that you've set apart for the day, but your to-do lists are constantly being filled by those inputs, and they do nothing but get longer.
Right.
There's this sort of struggle and temptation. I'm not sure if temptation is the right word, but this feeling of, and I'm thinking about this because of what you just said about, I'll have to this afternoon, hey, can we come back tomorrow? I got da-da-da. So you let them know that they've been heard. The busyness and the urgency of it can feel like I can barely even give you the time of day to tell you that I'd like to do this thing, or we can do it tomorrow, or I can't promise this. How, and you've been doing this as assistant principal now, out of the classroom for
9 weeks.
I was going to say a couple of months. Okay. How do you manage all of that tension, the weight of that, etc.?
Well, God made me wait a lot longer for this job
Okay. Then,
than I wanted to. I mean, he worked
yeah.
patience.
Okay. So you feel more prepared for that in ways now than you
Yes.
would have been?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my annual physical, they said, how's your stress level, especially with this new job and all that. I'm like, I probably have more stress that I worry that I don't feel stress, because I'm at a point in my life I realize I can do what I can do.
That's right.
I can't. If I can't do it,
Right.
why do I feel stress about it?
Right.
I will help you, and I may not do it on your timeline.
Yes.
But I will help you if it's in my power to do so.
Right.
And that's all I can do.
Yeah. And understanding one's human limits, and even having to express that to people who may not necessarily understand that for you, but that has to be a part of that process. to keep those boundaries for their health as well as yours.
Right.
Because oftentimes, as the responsibilities will just kind of press up,
Right.
You have to be able to say, these are things I can't do, and you're going to have to deal with this part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That helps them more than sometimes they think, even if it does feel urgent or emergent. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. So, so how do you feel more equipped and less equipped, both directions, as a teacher and assistant principal to help these kids?
As a teacher, it was a limited number of students.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would lose touch with them after they left my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
As an assistant principal,
Mm-hmm.
I have certain duties that I have to perform that involve tracking students throughout their high school career.
Yeah, yeah.
And watching them as they grow, hoping they're making their good choices and decisions so that we can get them where they need to be successful as a person and a human in life.
So in a larger way,
Much.
you're tracking more comprehensively with
Yes.
students in some ways.
Yes.
That's interesting, yeah. What do you, put some feet to that, some more color to that. Give us some examples of what you might mean by that.
So there are different ways that students can be termed successful in high school.
Okay.
You don't necessarily have to have a fantastic ACT score.
Sure.
We have things called EPSOS, early post-secondary opportunities.
Okay.
And that's so that somebody that wants to go into the military can get there. Somebody that wants to go to a trade school can get there and know how they're going to get there and be ready for that opportunity. And even for those that don't plan on doing anything except going out into the work environment, we have things that they can do that will tell us and tell the state of Tennessee that they are ready to work. They're ready to graduate. They're ready to contribute to society.
So a lot of times I think we think about high school as a college prep thing,
Yes.
right? But you're saying as an administrator, you're helping students that may not necessarily be wanting to go on to college and go to the military or go to vocational school or to go into a trade, which is quite fine, of course, that you help track that.
Right. So I'm still learning a lot of this
Gotcha.
information.
Yeah.
But we have, obviously, every school does. We have the times when the Army or the Marines will
Sure.
come in and put out their promotional materials and do a little recruiting at the school.
Yeah.
And we have some students that say, well, I don't have to graduate to get into the military,
Right.
which is true, but it's not true. Military has a test called the ASVAB.
Okay.
And if you don't have a high school diploma, you have to have a higher score on the ASVAB on a test than you do if you have that high school diploma.
Okay.
So students that would be tempted to drop out of high school because they're going into the military,
Right. Right.
they might not make it
Yeah.
because the students that are going to drop out of school are probably not your high-performing, high-testing students anyway.
Yeah.
And the ASVAB's not like the ACT; it's a practical test.
Okay.
But it's still, the
But
military
nonetheless.
wants to know that you have some ability
Sure.
to do some things.
Sure.
And so we're getting ready next week to give all of those tests, the ASVAB, the ACT, and practice ACT to our students
Yeah.
across the state of Tennessee.
So, what has been the biggest challenge for you? And you alluded to some things here and there, of course, but what's been the biggest challenge for you coming out of the classroom and becoming assistant principal?
Funny, I thought it was going to be scheduling myself,
Uh-huh.
but I learned that you don't have a schedule. As a teacher, you have class periods that you have, and then you have your lunch period, and you
Right.
have your bus duty times. I have it all the time.
Right.
So as far
Meaning,
as
as a teacher, your life was scheduled in
more
that sense.
structured,
Yes.
much
okay.
more structured.
Okay. Right.
And as a principal, assistant principal, you're still having to deal with things that come up
Yeah.
when they come up.
Yeah, when they come up.
Right. I'm also in charge of our safety at Chuckey-Doak High School, so I have to.
And that's a big deal in schools nowadays.
It is.
Compared to how it used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to schedule the drills, and there's so much in doing a fire drill that as a teacher I never knew.
Like there are a number of steps that have to happen.
You have to call the alarm company, you have to call the sheriff's department, you have to let them know that you're having a drill so they don't show up at the school going, "Where's the fire?"
Right. How often do you have to do fire drills, for example?
Oh, we're supposed to do one every month.
According to
The state of
insurance
Tennessee.
company? Oh, the state of Tennessee.
The state fire marshal.
Okay, okay.
And he checked my log just the other day.
Oh, yeah?
I have to do those. We have to do the tornado drills. We have to do lockdown intruder drills. We have to do, and it's hard to schedule those things because you don't, as a teacher, want to lose instructional time. As an administrator, you don't want to take away instructional time.
Right.
But for the safety of the student body, you still have to do it.
Yeah. Do you feel like, let's just take the drills kinds of things, and you named 4 or 5 of them. Do you feel pulled by different constituencies because you don't want to take away from class time, and yet you've got, I don't know, maybe this group, that extracurricular thing, an administrator big meeting because half of the people are gone maybe at this thing for the day, these competing interests that you have to always weigh. Is that something that feels different and new to this too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I had never used an online calendar before.
Uh-huh.
I keep the one on my phone for the family, so I remember doctor's appointments and
Right.
things like that
Yeah.
I might have to attend. But Mr. Broyles, the principal,
Uh-huh.
he has a calendar. That's our Chuckey-Doak virtual family calendar.
Uh-huh.
And it is chock full of everything. And some of it doesn't apply to me,
Sure.
but everything
you probably
is,
need to know.
everything is on there, and it's very helpful to have that. And that's one place that technology has really helped us a lot.
Yeah, because you can see kind of everything.
Yes,
And different people inputting their things shows up there.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, we have similar helps and overwhelming
Right.
pictures of things here at church. So you feel like your schedule is being made for you?
At sometimes,
Yeah.
yes. I really do try, again, communication is a big deal, so I try to communicate when it is I have to do certain things.
Yeah.
And I mentioned them before I put them on the calendar or immediately,
Mm.
so they don't get lost.
Yeah,
Because that calendar can have a number of events on it.
yeah. What percentage of your job as assistant principal, at least your version of assistant principal at Chuckey-Doak, what percentage of your job is things that you feel are in the realm of what you had no idea goes on as a teacher, and things that you kind of at least understood went on when you were a teacher? I'm fascinated by the differences.
Right.
Because when I became what we called senior minister, I began to realize, oh my goodness, there's a whole huge world that I had no idea went on. That just involved thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. That, when you're not experiencing it, you just don't know that.
Right.
What percentage of your job feels like when you were a teacher you were unaware, and what percentage of it do you think you had a good?
I would say probably about 40% of the things that I do,
Uh-huh.
I was not aware of or didn't give much thought to
Okay.
when I was a teacher.
Yeah.
I think about 60%.
You kind of vaguely at
They
least.
they know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Because they understand how the things work and how
Right.
integrated it all is and how much leadership is involved in all that. Yeah. Looking back for you, now that you're in an administrator position and in a real sense leading more people, what are some things that would have been more helpful for you to learn beforehand, do you think? I mean, there's a lot that you can't prepare for to get there.
Right.
But
I don't know. I honestly, I shadowed principals a couple of times, but when you do student teaching, you spend an entire, well, I think mine was 12 weeks, 12 to 14 weeks.
Right.
With another teacher or in front of the class doing it with somebody like at your back.
Yeah. So you get a very deep personal experience of it.
Right.
In student teaching.
And here, I'm not going to say I was thrown to the wolves because I've been given some very good mentoring by Mr. Broyles.
Sure.
And he's done an amazing job, I think, helping me get through these different things. But just all the different little things that you don't know about. The counseling that you're doing with students at different times. The tracking. I don't think I had any idea how much tracking was involved in administration.
Is tracking something that's kind of new in that sense?
I don't know that it's exactly
in
new.
education?
I'd say we've been doing it. We use the terms college bound or dual path or trade school bound at some point. And as a teacher, I thought that was something basically that the guidance office did. But the guidance office doesn't do that in a vacuum.
Right.
They consult with sometimes the principal, and we suggest at different times that maybe someone needs to go to the Center for Technology, the Green Technology Center, that they would benefit from classes like that. So there are things that we suggest sometimes, but then the EPSOS thing I think came out 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe not even that long ago, and that was a state directive to schools to let's make sure these kids are ready to go into a career or a profession if they're not planning to go on to secondary opportunities.
Yeah. At Chuckey-Doak, what percentage of kids go on into college and don't? Do you know?
At this point, I do not know, but based on other schools
You
in the
will eventually,
area,
sure, I'm sure.
I'm going to guess maybe 20 to 30 if you include Walter State.
Okay.
As far as a 4-year, that number's not going to be that high.
Okay.
It just shocked me because I came out of a dad college professor,
Right.
mom was a public school teacher.
Yeah.
There wasn't ever the question of if I was going to college.
Right.
It was where.
Right.
And that was how we
That's
talked
what I
about
grew
it
up
in my
in.
family.
That's what I grew up in.
And public teaching opened my eyes to that's not everybody's
Right.
reality.
Sure.
And, when you're in high school, you're so very self-centered. You kind of need to be because you're finding yourself anyway. But I never thought about it. And then when I started teaching high school, I was almost 10 years into being a teacher. Never even crossed my mind that it was a question. And looking around going, wait a minute, not everybody here's going to college?
Right.
So that was, again, one of those things I needed to grow up into,
Yeah.
learn about.
So what are some of the most troublesome things our kids today are facing?
Well,
That you have seen, are seeing?
social media, for sure.
Okay.
Our mental health has become a big issue with the pandemic and the social media. You can't replace human interaction with social media. And we have a whole, I don't want to say generation because I'm not sure that's what it is, but
Right.
it might end up being that way as this pandemic does not seem to want to let go.
I've wondered something crazy like that in recent days myself.
I'm afraid that we're forgetting how to be nice to each other. We're forgetting how to interact with each other in a positive way because we, as a society, even the adults, we see something on social media and, oh, nope, that's not right. And we're lashing out at people we don't know. And I just don't know how we get past that as a society.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, there's got to be some
That's
intervention
problematic
somewhere.
big time. I often look at things and I go, did you even double check any of your thoughts?
Right.
Triple check, quadruple check, look in the dictionary, go somewhere and think, okay, is this a logical fallacy? We have these resources all over the place at the keyboard that would help us think through it.
But we don't use those tools effectively.
No.
And our students, they're so, they're addicted to their phones.
Yes.
You take their phone away, they're probably going to try to replace it with the one-to-one device that we gave them because we have a pandemic and we have to provide them that opportunity.
Yeah.
But they just don't know. And addiction on the other side of that, where parents are dying, are going to jail, and grandparents who are older. They are tired, and they're having to raise someone who's growing up with a phone in their hand and not knowing how to interact with people.
Yeah.
I think for us, that's the biggest challenge. I wish we had a device that would block all signals unless the teacher had a code.
I think the military does have that.
Well, and I think they exist, but they're pretty expensive.
Yes,
and
they are.
I don't know that they'd work in a school. But the whole cell phone problem within schools, it's hard because we have parents that will call or text their children in the middle of class.
Sure.
Because something's going on, or
there's a book I read a couple years ago called 12 Ways Our Phone is Changing Us. It was very helpful for me along these lines. I know that schools have done and in youth ministry, we struggled with this early on. Here's the box, put them in. Or, okay, so go on and text your thoughts to this number, or send a poll out, or, answer the question on the board here. From what you've seen in classroom stuff, is it, and it's probably not a either or, but maybe a both and, but is it better to get rid of the phone entirely throughout the day, or to try to find ways to use that in ways that engage and interact with them? Because I know education has been struggling with this technology thing now for a good while.
Now that students have computers in
Right.
their hands,
Right.
I don't think that the telephone has any place in the classroom.
Okay, because they've got the device they need to do the thing.
But it's such a huge fight because it's not just the kids, it's their parents
Yeah.
that are going to say, I need access to my child at all times.
If the kid doesn't have the phone and I can't track them and I can't get to them immediately, then I feel that they're unsafe.
Right,
Fundamentally unsafe in the world.
right.
Yeah. And I suspect that's going to continue to even be tested in the courts,
Probably.
if it hasn't already been much. Yeah. Okay. So social media, mental health, addiction to the phone. Yeah, definitely. Which is weird. Which is a weird
It is.
struggle and problem, but not all of them literally, but almost all the kids are struggling with some version of that. Yeah. I've seen that quite a bit as well. You also alluded to something in your answer that I think is interesting that some folks may or may not be aware of but a lot of, at least in parts of Greene County, a lot of our kids are being parented by grandparents or aunts and uncles.
Or fosters.
Yes. A much higher percentage than people are aware.
Yes.
That's definitely a factor that a number of our kids in the county especially have to struggle with and deal with, and likewise those who are doing the parenting. How do you see that affecting the learning dynamics and the kids?
Well, there's this this new information coming out called Traumainformed therapy.
Yes.
And we don't always know the backstory on all of our students,
Right.
but most of the time we're going to see students in our office for discipline problems that have some background in trauma. And we do not have in the school, in the country, the personnel to deal with that. And it's terrible because you don't want to add to their trauma, but you also can't let whatever discipline they caused and whatever problem they caused infect the school. You know, you can't get away with it just because you are involved in trauma. That we need so many more people for students to talk to. And yes, we're in a mental health crisis.
We are. And the trauma-informed help happens because relationship
Right.
is the thing. It's like we say about the fix to addiction is connection.
Right.
And in a world where face-to-face, in-person relationship and engagement is less and less because of phone, because of technology, because of COVID, because we're very, very, very busy.
And we have trauma kids don't trust other people anyway.
Right. And so they've got these things keeping them from that on the insides that they may not process or understand well.
Right.
It's a kind of a perfect storm of ugly mental health and relationship problems.
And lashing out and doing whatever you feel like you should do at the time and not understanding why there are consequences.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah. Do you often feel like, as a teacher and administrator, how am I supposed to teach these kids this content about this thing or subject when these other things like that are going on? I've heard from a number of teachers and administrators, and we feel some of this in ministry a little bit too. We've got this goal over here, but we can't get past the other stuff for so many of them to get there. What percentage of your average teacher or administrator, and it may be a little bit different for those two, what percentage of their job do you feel like is this category of, I'm just dealing with all these other things apart from the educating them things?
Oh, I'm sure they're feeling like it's 30 to 40%.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, it looks like discipline problems in the classroom.
Sure.
So when you've got classroom discipline issues, then it impacts the learning.
Yeah.
But if you can't remove them completely, which you can't when they're, when it's 20 or 30% of your student body that's probably dealing with something.
Right.
I mean, I don't even remember what the statistic I heard about how many students had lost a parent due to COVID or a caregiver due to COVID. You can't keep everything going the way you would want to in a class. And I think it's probably critical at this point for us to start looking at making sure that those students know that college is an option, but that doesn't keep them from being a successful person if they decide to do something else.
Right.
And there's so many people that think, well, if you're not ready to go to college, then what did they do for you in high school?
That's right.
But
so adding value to those other things and not just the college prep.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What are some things you think, part of our church-wide strategy is we have a campus pastor at Chuckey-Doak High School. We have a campus pastor who is a part of connecting with Greenville High School and then hopefully soon at South Green. Well, not hopefully, soon. What are the kinds of things we can do as a church to come alongside schools that might help some of that stuff that schools are always dealing with, if anything comes to mind?
Well, the challenge right now is that we still are not back to normal with COVID, so we limit people, we limit speakers coming in, we limit large gatherings, but I know that you work with sports teams. If there are other groups that you could work with, if our teachers could invite FCCers into other areas of student life, that would be the only thing I could think. We don't have dances anymore. We don't have, or we haven't.
Right.
Yeah, we've talked about maybe, but maybe not, because there are inherent problems right there also with discipline issues when you have students in a dark environment after school hours.
Yeah, sure.
But it would definitely be something I'd be willing to pursue with our staff and faculty.
Sure. So 2 questions to finish up that we basically ask everybody. What's God teaching you? And what are you excited or encouraged about? So what is God currently teaching you? And what are you excited or encouraged about?
Well, I think he's still working on the patience. He might not ever get there, but he's still working on it.
It's slow.
Yes.
Patience with what? What do you mean? Like, you don't strike me as an impatient person.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Oh,
well, okay. So.
Well, I mean, with the fertility issues, I didn't get married until I was late 20s and figured we needed to start our family as soon as possible, and it didn't didn't happen easily. So that was an emotional roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
I've pursued administrative job for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to talk about the list.
The list.
The list.
What is the list?
Of jobs that I've applied for and or interviewed for.
Yeah.
That went against me.
Yeah.
But I think he was prepping me.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I don't know my next goal.
Yeah.
Professionally.
Yeah.
So I'm sure when I figure out what it is, God's going to throw the patience right back at me.
So you're learning patience for a goal that may not necessarily yet be there, which makes it feel like more of an impatient
just kind of a waiting
stress.
game. I'm waiting again, and so it takes patience to wait.
Indeed.
What am I hopeful for?
Yeah.
That I can have good impact
Mm-hmm.
on the community, on the school, on the students.
Yeah.
It's hard to get to know them when I'm still wearing a mask. When we don't have an assembly at the beginning of the year with all of the students say, hey, let's welcome our new assistant principal. Those kinds of things were the norm.
Yes.
Pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And I don't wear my mask 100% of the time, but out in the school, I usually have one on.
Yeah.
So I think it's harder to build that relationship through a mask.
Yes.
So I'm hopeful that the pandemic, that the whole society can go back a little to what felt normal to us.
Yeah.
And I can start working with those students in a meaningful way, not wearing a mask.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing all that and getting some insight into, as my wife says, Christy, what the hecky. Actually, that started with Ben, what the hecky.
Yes.
But
yes. As long as it's not hokey.
No hokey. Hoeke.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yes. Join us next time. Thanks for being with us.